Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. International break, podcast time. Here with Sunny once again from Sunny Talk Spurs, Sunny Snelling. And we're going to try to make some sense of sort of Spurs' situation today. Plenty of things to get stuck into. We're going to kind of break up the podcast a bit more. We're providing some structure. We're building out a back line for this podcast, a formation for it, if you will. But first thing first, we got to be polite. We got to ask people how they are. Gonna go to my man to my next to my left or right, whatever what it is. Davo, how are you? How are things? Made a video today on the contracts. What's up with you?
Yeah, I'm good, Jacko. Thanks very much for asking. Yeah, video today, just sort of like what contracts are coming up over the next 2 years. And, you know, off the back of David Ornstein's article, basically explaining that we might not have any money this January. Where can we recruit some money and who could go? And yeah, it didn't really look too good, Jack. So, you know, if you want to check that out, feel free. But apart from that, I'm good. Excited to get going on the podcast.
Dave was chasing the transfer budget money by the looks of it. Sonny, how are things? What's up with you?
Yeah, not bad. Busy as always. I was going to have a little cheeky plug as well, early doors. You know, all the people. I mean, I've loved being on this podcast to start. I think, you know, forming a good little unit, aren't we? So closing in on 2,000 subscribers. That's my aim for the end of the year. So if you want to check out, I've got some transfer bits this week as well. So go check it out because I had a lot of fun doing them and researching some of the targets, which we might talk about today.
I really liked your Richie thumbnail because, you know, I am going on Richie runs, you know, when I can. And, you know, sometimes I'm a little jealous of, you know, the Richie photos that people do find. Look like you were, you know, able to get some good ones and you brought the best out of his old hair that he used to have too. But from what I could tell. But everybody, if you can for us, please smash that like button. Please head on over to Sunny Talk Spurs. Do check out his channel. Do check out all the videos that he pumps out, especially over this international break when we are just basically just looking for something, you know, to fill the time, you know, while we're, you know, trying to get any Spurs content that we can. And also too, if you want, feel free to grab a membership because there is an extra video for you guys to watch as well, where we kind of talk about whether Ange could make some sacrifices to preserve his position in the league table. And that's exclusive only to all of the members, and plenty of other videos you would get with that as well. But we're going to start off first with some quick fire news. Mickey Van de Ven has a grade 2 hamstring injury. That's according to plenty of sources. It could be a borderline grade 3. He might be out from maybe 3 to 4 weeks if it is that grade 2. But if it is a grade 3, it might be more like 6 to 8 weeks. I feel like there's a big difference between 3 weeks and 8 weeks, Sonny. So how do you make any sense of this? I mean, are you hopeful, or does this make you happy at least that it's not that big of a timeline, like 4 months or anything like that?
I love how everyone on Tottenham Twitter now has a PhD and is a doctor, and kind of even from the running and then pulling up, people can identify how long it will be, what it is. I was like, what's going on there? I didn't realize we all went to medical school. But I'll be honest, and you probably realize and people realize on this podcast now, I'm sometimes a glass half empty. So I'm going to just believe that he's going to be out for, you know, Ange said January. And I feel like Ange isn't this mind games. You know, like sometimes Arteta will go like, oh, we could miss Sunday. And then Saka pops up. You know, I just feel like, you know, it was good. I think, you know, Spurs released a video of him already in rehab and everyone went nuts with that. We're like, he's already in the gym. And it's like, I still think, you know, it's going to be a long while before we see him. Same with Maddison as well. So I think it's more likely to be 8 weeks. I mean, I had to Google what grade 2 and grade 3 was. So, you know, I'm not one of these medics on Twitter.
Dr. Dave, what do you make of the assessment?
I mean, look, you know, I'd argue that half the fans, you know, on social media, you know, are more qualified than some of the medical department with how long our players seem to be out for. But look, I'll be honest, I think you're looking at more January. And I think it's very important that we don't rush them back. I mean, you know, the consensus would be getting back as soon as possible, getting back in for that December period, a lot of games. But you could have consequences come the back end of the season, which is where European football and that is sort of won. So for me, I think it's very important that we don't rush them back. I would say January, and also in January, it's a little bit of a break there as well. So I would hazard a guess maybe towards the end of January when we'll be seeing Mickey Van de Ven again.
All right. I'm not going to provide any medical, opinion or knowledge on this one, everybody. I'm just happy to hear that it's not something like 4, 5, 6 months, like what we had with Bentancur
Mm.
or anything like that. It's good to hear that he at least will be back by sort of what would be, I guess, even worst case scenario, more like kind of the halfway point of the season, which is good to see for sure. Let's move on to the next bit of news. Going to keep it moving here and going to go actually straight to Dave on this one. Tottenham are sending scouts to watch Pedro Goncalves. Pedro G, big fan of his since the days of Black Hep Euro Talk. Dave plays a variety of positions. He's had also kind of two different types of seasons where one season, he was just banging in goals left and right. And then other season, I believe, he was much more, of a creative type player for Sporting. We do have a bit of a history with deals with them. Are you getting a little excited, maybe more optimistic that maybe he could land his way over here?
Very excited, Jack. Look, this is a guy that I've been after for some time. I've been on about him since the summer. Yeah, I really like him, Jack. He can play, he could play a false nine if you want to do. He could play a left, right. He could be good. He could step in for Madison, no problem in that sort of creative role. For me, it's a no-brainer. You look at the technical ability of the guy. Will them skills transfer to the Premier League? 100% they will. You know, you look at Wolves, for instance, the amount of players that they've signed from the Portuguese league, and with their technical ability alone, they're well able to acclimatise to the Premier League. So for me, it would be an absolute no-brainer. It adds strength in depth, and it's a signing that will get me very, very excited. Don't think it'll happen this January. I think it'll be more a summer deal, or if we could strike a similar deal to what we did with Porro, where we sort of loan him for 6 months and pay for it in the summer, that'd be absolutely awesome.
Sounds like it's going to be a tissues type of signing for Dave there.
Yeah,
Sonny,
dark room and tissues.
Sonny, do you have any knowledge of Pedro Goncalves? Or if you also want to answer this question, it feels like the Primeira Liga, the Portuguese league, they have a decent track record with players, hitting the ground running in the Premier League.
The Portuguese league is a good breeding ground. It seems to me that, Chelsea especially would always pluck some good talents from there. We obviously have a really good knowledge of Sporting, having played them last year in the Champions League. I think when I saw this tweet as well, we still seem interested in bringing Marcus Edwards back to the club. So I think he would be a fantastic acquisition. It was a shame when we let him go, because especially he was great in that game last year. But I'm actually in general excited with some of the transfers we are being linked with. I had someone comment on one of my YouTube shorts earlier saying, yeah, I think the only striker we need is Mbappe and Osman and Kvaratskhelia. And I was like, I don't know where you're shopping, but it's not in the same shops as where we are going to shop. But like some of the names, and I've got a few videos coming out about Antonio Nusa at Club Bruges and
Right.
Santiago Jimenez at Feyenoord, and they're very exciting prospects. And I really like this stat-based, avenue we're going down at Spurs. And I feel like Pedro Goncalves sort of fits into this bill. A little bit older than some of the players we're being linked to, but I just think they're good options. Sporting are a very exciting club. Play that sort of attacking style of football. So lots of names that I am very happy that we're being linked with. And, we've seen so far under this, new regime of transfer signings that they've all hit the ground running. So, yeah, back the system already.
And just last thing on Pedro Goncalves, he's a Spurs signing. It's one that he gets Spurs fans out their seats. And that's what we love in an attacking player. He's that guy.
Love to hear it. Going to you on this one, Sonny. Bayern Munich interested in Eric Dier. How much belief can you give that? How much do you is it just already laughing at like Dave? Do you feel like it's a ridiculous rumor? Could there be truth to it?
In other news, Thomas Tuchel has decided he will leave his post at Bayern Munich and throw away all the trophies. Confusing. He was linked with them in the summer, I believe,
yes,
and then he was also linked with Dortmund, I think. So if I cast my mind back correctly, confusing. Even when I read the tweet, it said something like versatile player who can play midfield and centre back. I was like, they've not been watching the same player that we've been watching the last couple of months. Don't know how you'd value him. I feel like in this weird modern market, you'd probably get 15 for him somehow. I think. Do you know what? I feel horrible how I talk about Dier because he has given us memories. I will scoring on his Dave not agreeing there. Scoring on his debut, being carried by Mr. Dembele. Time to go, I think, for Eric Dier. But I just don't. Bayern are interesting team, and I just don't see where he fits because they've got, you know, two good centre backs in De Ligt and Kim Min-jae. They've got a midfield that they wanted to get Palhinha, and I've still fancy them to sign him because, you know, I know he signed a new contract at Fulham, but I could imagine, you know, it won't be hard to get him out. There'll be a clause in there somewhere. But yeah, confusing, very odd. He'll probably go on a free, won't he? So just so long, goodbye, farewell.
Yeah.
Auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.
You made a good point that Bayern are so full of great center backs already. So I would see this more realistically as a golf partner signing than really an actual signing for the defense.
Harry Kane, mate.
It's his agent trying to garner some interest.
I mean, he's an athletic guy, Dier. I think he can, you know, play a lot of different sports. So maybe that's just, you know, he's signed as more of a golf partner, I guess, for Harry Kane for the Bayern links. But Dave, we'll have a lot to say about Eric Dier quickly later in part 2. So I think, you know, we'll move quickly into Tyrese Hall. Our very own Tyrese Hall has been brought up to the first team to train. I think he's had a couple of sessions actually already, kind of back to back. He is a man that I think is a fan of the under-21 watch-alongs. He's a very talented youngster. Very blessed that he even follows me on Twitter as well as you, Davo. So what can you say to Tyrese Hall? And just makes you feel good, really. I don't even know if there's a question behind this.
Oh, look, do you know what, Jack? In a way, I feel like a bit of a proud father of some of these guys because, you know, I touted these guys to potentially, you know, be up there in and around, and they're getting there. Like Tyrese Hall, I remember, if you remember, when we went back to watch the cup final last season, Jack, you know, just so we could have a bit of joy in our club. I remember saying to you about Tyrese Hall's work rate, how energetic he is, how he gets around the pitch. You know, I says that will serve him very well in the long run. Look, he's a long way off getting into the first team. Let's be realistic about it. But he's on the right path. He's on the right trajectory. He gets to put himself in front of Andrew's eyes for a couple of weeks. You know, and you know, it's good that Andrew's working with these guys more, I would say, geared towards next season or getting them ready for maybe a good loan move. They do well there. They come back into the first team. But Tyrese Hall deserves it. You know, people say work rate is a given in modern day football. As we've seen over Tottenham over the last 3 to 4 years, that's not quite there. You know, it's not quite true. You even say the same. You look at Man United, work rate is not a given anymore. So Tyrese Hall keeps that attitude. You very well might see the guy in a Spurs jersey in the future. But first team action is too soon. He's only 18. He's on the young side of 18 as well.
Yeah, he is on the young side, but he is having a great season, actually, by the looks of things, from what I can tell with the under-18. So, Tyrese, Mr. Hall, just keep up what you're doing, sir, and you'll find that your way up there. You'll get that time. You'll get that chance. Moving quickly into a video that Sonny actually has done on his own channel. Richarlison has been linked to a Saudi Arabia move. Could you see Spurs realistically selling him in January, Sonny?
Well, obviously, if you want to know my thoughts, go and see the video. But
true. Sorry,
I do. I'm joking. It's an interesting one because even the tweet, I keep referencing the tweets, but in that one, it was very, you know, it wasn't clear. It just said Saudi clubs, but you know, I mean, they're all owned by the same sort of people, so they're probably deciding which club wants him. Probably the Al-Eti facts of this world, just to, you know, so he links up with probably, you know, someone who's related to Merseyside in some way. But I said on that video that I believe if we're given the right price, and then we can then put that money into a Jimenez or an Antonio Nusa, then I would be more open to it. And the price I said was £45 million. Which is not too much of a loss, like for Richarlison. I mean, it's a 20 million loss, but I also did caveat that by saying, personally, I would like him to stay. I think there is still a good player there. I still think he's still worth the chance because technically, I don't count last season because he was playing under Conte, who ruined him. You know, they had that debacle after the Champions League as well, where Richarlison said he's been playing like shit. So his words, not mine. And like now he's playing under Conte. I still think there's an opportunity for him to, you know, excel and become the player that we thought we were signing for £65 million. But then on the flip side, to caveat that again, he's now been put in a position where he's not ready to play in through the middle. Son's taken that position. On the left-hand side, where he's looked all right this season, I'll be honest, he's had a few good moments. Brennan Johnson wants to play there. He's also a bit lucky that Solomon is out injured. even Perisic as well. Brian Hill's only coming back from injury. So that is the position of the, and also we're looking at players in that position. Left wingers has been touted to us, the names I've mentioned already. So it is a tricky situation, but that's the thing I would say. I'd still give him the rest of this season and then one more year. But if Saudi Arabian clubs on the table right now, 45 million, that would be tempting. It's all up to Levy, though. Levy, final point, I'd say, we've seen with Tanguy and Ndombele, not willing to get rid of him for pennies, would rather loan him out and let him rot, and save some face than actually, selling him and everyone goes, well, you made a massive loss on him.
That's a good point you make there. That's a good point that you make there. That Spurs aren't the one to just make that impulse decision, or not even impulse decision, just make that harsh decision, ruthless decision. You know what? Just cut the bleeding now. Just stop it now. Let's just move on. No need to try to resurrect this and a second, third time type of thing, which we love to do. We love to try to rebrand something a third or fourth time with a player. So it's a good point you make there. Dave, any quick thoughts on Richarlison being linked to Saudi Arabia? I personally don't see him going there in particular, but could you see him actually being moved on in January?
I don't see him being moved on in January, and unless it is a good offer. I think the only realistic option of it happening is if Saudi do come in with the big bucks and we can offload him out there. But personally, I don't see Richarlison wanting to move out there. I really don't. I don't think he's that sort of guy where he's willing to trade in the money over his own ambition. So I think he'll be here towards the end of the season for sure.
He already gives up like 70% of his wages, or he's one of those kind of guys, to a lot of different charities and everything. So doesn't seem like he's that interested, in getting the extra cash or anything. Could be wrong. Totally could be. And even just recently today, that Marcelo Gallardo guy from Argentina went to Saudi Arabia for some reason or another. That kind of confused me. So you never do know. But let's move quickly into a question that I've just kind of seen kind of thrown about even on your own channel, Sonny, as well as plenty of channels kind of throughout our lovely Spurs community, and also plenty of articles, from journalists. And it makes sense, while we're on international break, just sort of looking at the season so far, bird's eye view. Any lessons learned? Are we satisfied with where we are? Maybe a bit worried about the future? All those kind of questions of one. Go to you first, Sonny, on it. How do you feel like with the season so far?
I feel like if you said to any Spurs fan, 4th in the league, 2 losses, 2 draws, and I've forgotten the maths, the rest were wins. I've forgotten how many fixtures, 12 or whatever. I think they would have snapped your hand off. I think they really would have snapped your hand off. And also, it's not just the fact we're sitting 4th. We've played some of the best football we've seen in years. We've seen players who I had doubted, like Vicario. We all know how much I doubted Vicario, Jack. Blossom and become players that have been fantastic. We've got players such as Maddison and Van der Ven, even with the injuries, who are going to be stellar signings for years to come. We've seen players revitalised under a coach who, the likes of Romero and, Pedro Porro, who some people had question marks over. Could they actually play for Tottenham? And, players also reborn like Son as well. Like, after last year, people were calling Son washed up and done. He's now, firing in the goals again. But, the problem is, back-to-back losses against, obviously Chelsea game had its issues, but Wolves, it was poor. Like the football was poor. People will then reflect on it and go, "Oh, actually, is it all too good to be true? Did we overhype Spurs?" I've seen a lot of that on social media and YouTube at the moment. But personally, I'm very happy. I think we're still heading in the right direction, enjoying the ride. Still think there is a possibility we can finish in the top 4. I don't see why not. There's still, I mentioned on the bonus feature, there's a lot of teams who are hit and miss, who we're facing soon as well, who I fancy us to pick some points up against. And this style of football is it is going to be gung ho. It is going to be risk and reward football. I keep calling it, but I'm still backing this manager. I think he's going to take us to new levels. And I think we just got to back it. So far, I'd say the majority of the fan base is not, I wouldn't say too worried, because I've seen like people worried about the injuries, but they're still positive. They're still happy with what they've seen. It's now up to Levy to really, in January, make a bit of put down a marker and actually back this manager a bit more, which stereotypically Levy doesn't do in January. But I'm happy, and I'm sure you both are as well.
If you were to write a season so far article, Dave, what would you put in it? How do you feel from a bird's
Yeah,
eye view sort of perspective?
yeah. Look, first of all, I'm not going to talk about, I still back Ange Postecoglou, and this isn't a dig at Sonny. I see this everywhere. I find it borderline disrespectful. Look what this guy's done for this football club.
So
We're sitting
far.
2 points off the top of the league. No one at the start of the season predictably would be here, especially off the season we had last season where we had 3 different managers in the dugout. We had players that weren't committed to the cause. Ange Postecoglou has come in straight away, being able to get a lot of players who many questioned in terms of recruitment to look like the players that we thought they were when we recruited them, Jack. To play a style of football that has, managed to appease many Spurs fans. A manager that's won accolades along with players, all of our leadership group winning accolades as well, for what they've done on the football pitch. Losing the best striker in the world and still finding a way to score goals and win games. What this guy has done for this football club, I think I say this for everybody, but he's made me fall back in love with it. The last few years have been hard. It's been long, and like I said, Jack, it was only a couple of seasons ago where I said to you, usually I love Spurs squads. I hated it. I hated a lot of the Spurs squad we have, and now I'm at the point where I'm back in love with the club. And look, let's be honest. He's managed to clean up Daniel Levy's image a little bit, by things have gone that well. Daniel Levy has done, Q&As with fans that he hasn't done since Pochettino's era. So look, what Postecoglou has come in and done so far has been absolutely amazing. And I think we should be more grateful and show more gratitude for what he has done for this club, considering where we were heading and all the difficulties he's faced. Let's not forget, the fan base took a lot of convincing with this guy, but also, the wider footballing community, a lot of them laughed at disappointment while they're sitting there, now, looking at Tottenham going, are they the real deal? So, and I think he's also, cleaned up our image in the media a little bit in terms of being a little bit more respected, and everyone absolutely loves him. And look, I'm very happy with where we are, Jack, because I didn't predict we'll be this high up in the table. I didn't predict we'll be 2 points off top. The way we're going after the Chelsea game and the Wolves game, which blips happen in a season, you'd swear we're just sitting outside the relegation zone. I don't understand it. And am I worried for the future? No, I'm not. I believe in Ange Postecoglou. I believe in his methods. I believe in his man management. I believe in his skills. But also, I believe in a lot of the players that we have in the squad now. I believe in a lot of them. Just hopefully that, what we do have to use right now doesn't derail us completely in years gone by. I suppose that's probably the only concern I'd have, that now that we're relying on some players that didn't do it in years gone by, and it's usually always in around this time.
Yeah.
Conte, Jose, Nuno, people like that, all the wheels fell off in around this time. That's the only thing that concerns me. But I do think we've got enough of the old egos out in the squad for Postecoglou to be able to maintain it. And for me, I'm excited, Jack.
I'd read the hell out of that article, Dave. I mean, that was a beautiful answer in terms of the season so far. Also, too, with kind of Sonny as well went into some of the specifics, right, of kind of some of the things that maybe we went into this season with worries about, right? Worries about losing one of the best strikers in the world, Pedro Porro. Can he adapt to playing in a back four? A lot of questions and a lot of fears. Even that one in particular, Pedro Porro. That was, I believe, my sort of like, I think Dave and I did like sort of a, what's your hot take, or what's your sort of kind of like a unexpected surprise or something like that. And it was more like in like a bad sort of sense, like in a negative sort of sense, like what could be something that you didn't expect that might go wrong for Spurs. And I did sort of say like, what if Pedro Porro like does end up really not suiting, this sort of type of system. And he's just really only made for a back four, or sorry, a back five and a wing back type of play. And I think the fact that Ange has been able to incorporate him into the system, also because Pedro is a great player, can't all, just take that away from him. But there's been a lot of worries and a lot of doubts that did go into the season that I think led to people feeling like it would be a rocky sort of start, or there would be a lot of bumps in the road. And Ange has done a very good job in trying to smooth it out as best that he can and make sense of what was a very chaotic summer and a lot of things that could have potentially gone wrong. I mean, it was littered, it felt like, with banana peels this summer, with so many things that could have gone wrong. And he did a pretty good job at maneuvering all of them. And you have to give him credit for that. Like you were just saying, Dave, you really do. And I think that's how you would probably answer, right? The season so far is you just have to look at all the obstacles, all the things that we were really fearful of going into it. And maybe now, like looking into the future, some of those have actually proven to be right, which we'll talk about, of course, having to do with maybe the center back situation and things like that. But some of the other ones that we did mention, nowhere near as bad or haven't come up yet or anything like that in the way that we thought they would. And even in particular with the striker situation, like Spurs were always going to feel the loss of Harry Kane, but he's done a very good job of trying to make the best sort of effort of it, especially with the last, sort of day of the or last day of the preseason before going into the Brentford game, and he lost Harry Kane. So really was just an incredible effort by Postecoglou and the team. Even what he did with also the leadership group, made changes there, which I think was absolutely necessary. Dave and I had made a lot of videos in the past about, how can you sort of kickstart a culture change at Spurs. And I think he's done that actually with changing the leadership around. And I think that's led to why the squad dynamic is so much better. It's a list of things that he's done very well. And that's why I think you can't not be satisfied with the season so far. I think you can be a little worried about the future because of, the injuries and everything like that, but it's almost out of his control, not really much of a reflection on him. So I think you have to be satisfied with what we've done so far. Anybody have any other thoughts before we go into part 2?
Sonny?
I think we're all good. I think we've summed it up. We're all happy Spurs fans.
happy Clappers got a reborn. Just quickly, Jack, I don't know if you listened to the latest episode of the Peter Crouch podcast, but we found out who Parched is in the Tottenham squad. So James Maddison done an interview with the owner of the Samrat, and he asked him who's the most parched, and he said Pedro Porro. He's always, whenever you look at him, he's always hugging hands or in and around and Postecoglou.
That makes total sense. He's always around the cameraman, always smiling at everybody. He's even when people thought that
first in the celebrations. I've always noticed he's at the front, just either doing everything, like shirting and
fans and everything.
Yeah,
doing this.
I swear he did. Did you see? He did the. He looked at the crowd the other day and like a raised eyebrow or something, or like a.
I was
just like, he's a cartoon character. That's.
I love Pedro. I really do. He does crack me up. That actually spot on. Actually, it makes a lot of sense that even I think when everybody thought that Mickey Van de Ven and Sonny had this sort of special relationship, Pedro Porro boots him out of the way, and I think he ended up forming his own with Mickey. He's absolutely parched to the max, and not even with the manager, with the players, the staff, the fans. He's parched to everything that he does. So fair play to
Pedro Parcho.
I don't know why though, but it warmed my heart when I heard it. And I wasn't surprised either, I was like, yeah, I can see that.
I was surprised, but when you think about it more and more, like, yeah, that absolutely makes sense there. And it's good to have a man like Pedro be the man of the parch. But we'll happy clap ourselves into part 2, everyone, where we are going to discuss the Phillips and Eric Dier situation, and maybe with the benefit of hindsight, maybe changes we could think about for next time. But we'll see you in part 2. Yes, everyone, into part 2, and it is going to be the Phillips and Dier conversation. We have the benefit of hindsight after the result against Wolves. Might have spoken about it a bit last week, but I feel like now we have kind of a lot more to work with. We have some more recent evidence, right? And I'm actually going to go to Dave, I think, first, because he can definitely get us started on it. Don't want us to, maybe have Dave steal all the answers, but he definitely does have a lot of good things to say on this one. So Dave, after the recent result, how do you feel about Dier and Davies being picked this last weekend? And are you desperate to see some changes for the next game?
I feel the same as I did before it, Jack. This weekend hasn't provided me any answers. I didn't think, that I didn't already know. These guys, they just don't have them. You just cannot play for Tottenham any longer. They just cost us every time they play. Look, as soon as I seen the team sheet last week, Jack, me and you spoke about before we went live, we knew we'd have to score a couple of goals. We even said it during the watch along. Can't rest on the laurels with the early goal. We have to go and score a couple with that back line. So we knew that would be the case. And look, we're getting into the realms now of after defeats where we're looking at Ange Postecoglou. We're going after Sonny. We're going after Basuma, Porro, even Højbjerg to an extent, right? And I get it, right? None of them played well. But the reality is they've come in and they've performed brilliantly so far up until this season. But when these two individuals step in, the football becomes turgid. It looked like Conte ball, Jose ball, Nuno ball. And there's no coincidence that when they step in, everyone else's performances drop, that the football looks the same as it did over the last 3-4 years. And, you know, there's a lot to be said for that, Jack. A hell of a lot to be said for that. You look at the likes of Son being on fire, Kulu being on fire, Porro being on fire, Basuma being on fire, Højbjerg, every time he's been asked to come on off the bench or even starting in a couple of games, you know, without them guys behind him, came in, performed, no problem. But as soon as these guys step in, Højbjerg's performance drops, everyone else's performance drops. And we can no longer continue like this. We can keep blaming the squad as a whole because we don't want to pull out one or two individuals. But at the end of the day, how do you expect to improve this squad if you don't pinpoint the problem and everybody has to take a part of the blame? We should have already learned our lessons. That last season, they were part of our worst defense ever in the Premier League at Tottenham Hotspur. All of a sudden, they come out and we look like one of the best defenses ever at Tottenham Hotspur. So again, you know, it says a lot to me. And
yeah, not a lot of coincidence, or these aren't all coincidences.
They're not coincidences, Jack. But the biggest thing when I went back and I looked at the goals specifically, it came from us being poor in possession. You look at Dier, right? The first goal. Dier has a touch. It's a heavy touch. He invites the press. Kulu's pointing for it in behind the fullback. Dier delivers it in front of the fullback, out for a throw-in. You know, if that's Romero, if that's Van de Ven, that pass is made. Or they have the confidence to be able to run with it. You look at Ben Davies when he got on the ball, he had an option to go back to Vicario or out to Eric Dier to relieve the pressure, which is what Romero and Van de Ven have been doing. But he didn't do that. He passed it into Højbjerg, who was already being pressed, who then passed it on to Lo Celso, who was already being pressed, which led to the turnover for them to go and get that second goal. In the crunch moments, they do not have the mentality, but also with the Ange Postecoglou's system, with the wing-backs, you know, Porro going into midfield on the right, or, you know, Doji overlapping on the left, or whatever way he does it with Porro and Emerson, then you've got your midfielders pushing on. Your centre-backs are the two most exposed players in this squad, and they have to be competent on the ball, also competent defensively. And the drop-off is just way too big from Romero and Van de Ven down to these guys. And for me, Postecoglou has a huge decision to make, Jack. He can stick with these two and, you know, suffer the same fate, because every other manager that's stuck with them, all of a sudden questions come around the manager, come around the whole squad in general. Or he can just, you know, look to say, look, it was an experiment. It didn't work. And, you know, I'll go with a Phillips and pair him with Romero when he's back, or a Phillips and an Emerson, or a Dorrington and someone else. You know, try something different rather than stick with what's let us down in the past.
Yeah. Sonny, Spurs broke the record for the longest a Premier League team has ever been leading a match to then still go on and lose it. So basically that was the longest a team had ever held a lead for and then still went on to go and lose the game. Dave mentioned, and that's could be included in this, so many things that sort of went wrong, so many things that change. Surely not all of them are coincidences, right? With the drop off in play, and also even that record being broken might be a bit harsh to throw them under that, but maybe not.
Another record for the trophy cabinet. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it, as I said in the bonus video. Like, the drop off was obvious. We saw the drop off. Those players are probably not, you know, not Ange players. We can see that. I mean, I personally believe Eric Dier was more at fault than Ben Davies. Well, actually, Ben Davies had some moments where he was all right. I thought he was more comfortable in possession. I think his passing's better. Obviously, he's left-footed as well, which helps in the situation. Yeah. The only issue is that I see is he can't play in a 4. He was good at playing in a 3 because he had that sort of, you know, time to, you know, in a 3 when you're on the left-sided centre-back, you've got a bit more of a licence because you've got 2 other players next to you, really, and the wing-backs as well. Yeah, protected is the word I'd use. But naturally, like, and airily as well, like I'd say this side as well, without Van de Ven and Romero, is quite prone to, you know, ball swinging in. And I don't think Destiny Udogie or whoever the left back is, or Pedro Porro, are that good airily to defend those. And I don't think Ben Davies is either. So that's the thing. And I mean, Højbjerg, feel like him playing quite far. I don't think it worked him playing in that position. I feel like I would have preferred seeing him as the 6 maybe and Basuma as the 8, because I feel like Basuma is more of that final third pass, which Ange likes from his 6. But when you've got the players, we'll probably, that's what the Villa game will be good for, actually seeing who ends up playing in that 6 role, because Basuma's not there because he'll be banned. But I'd put more blame on Dier than I would Davis. But that's not saying that Davis isn't, Davis isn't at the level either. I think
Dave
Davis
and I struggled with that in the watch along, though. Just to interrupt, sorry. Dave and I did struggle with that. Like, Davies was defending well and that he was putting out a lot of fires, but then in possession, he was still kind of hurting us and kind of how he was building out from the back.
I do feel sorry for him though. Like, I feel like in his career at Tottenham, it's either been like he's played as a backup left back usually, and he didn't play well against Crystal Palace. Saw himself get subbed off for Emerson Royale. Or he's been shoehorned into a centre-back position, which is not comfortable in 2 formations that, don't work to his style.
Is he the jack of no trades? And that he's sort of like can't really do anything totally competently? Or
that's not on the manager's fault, though. That's not the manager's fault. We're guilty, like, playing to Dier and to Ben Davies' style. Why would you orchestrate your system to a backup player? At the end of it, I think, look, Jack nailed it on the head earlier on, where he said we're masters at repurposing, people, and this is what we've done with Davies. Rather than accept his legs were gone, he wasn't good enough at left back, get him out, get the next guy in. We go, oh, well, I know we've got a problem at centre back. Don't want to spend too much money there, so we'll repurpose him as a centre back.
I'd rather got
and then he still cost us. It's shocking. We just have to take no for an answer sometimes.
Square pegs, round holes, FC. That's what we are.
I just, on the weekend, this is what Dave and I also mentioned to the pre-match thoughts for the members, was we actually said it started off with, like, we want Dier to actually shut us up this weekend. We were just like, because we get 3 points and he puts in a good performance, or even just gets really just 3 points, that would have shut David and I up at the end of the day, because, we can't really complain about a win. Really, right? But we did end up, seeing ourselves to 1-0 in the 90th minute. I think Dave and I were kind of getting ready. All right, this day didn't have to be about Dier and Davies. We get to talk about other things. And maybe we were even more kind of talking about players like Basuma and stuff that really dropped off kind of in the game, really. But then we conceded the 2 goals at the end in the manner in which we did. They couldn't escape the conversation, and then they couldn't make us shut up, and we still find ourselves having to talk about it. I'm not saying not saying that we want to, or it's like needing or kind of having to really talk about it at this stage. And I sort of go into it where I feel like I'm not really sure what we have to gain anymore from playing Dier and Davies at the same time. Going into these tough fixtures, there might be a need for one of them to stick around, and I might probably lean more towards Davies, because, like I said, I do think he can offer one maybe more than the other in terms of actually being able to defend and put out fires like in moments. He has more of that knack to see the danger than really Dier does. Dier is almost blind as a bat, it feels like, when it comes to danger around him in the penalty area and just any sort of moment. But this is what I sort of mean, where the drop off in quality is already so severe that I'm more like lowering my standards, where it's kind of like, all right, can you do one or the other? Can you be good in possession, where you wouldn't, play any hospital passes? You're able to build out from the back. You can help us sustain that high line by retaining possession in higher areas, not just passing it around the back, putting ourselves in trouble. There's guys in the academy, I think, that would do that. In the case of maybe Phillips or Dorrington, I do think they would offer that sort of ability in possession that we would actually need, and what we were missing in the Wolves game, where I think Davies and Dier weren't good enough in possession to help us out and to really get the most out of Ange's system. And so, like I said, lowering my standards here, just asking for one or the other. Davies was able to provide maybe that defensive solidity that we did need. Wasn't able to provide, I think, the ability and possession that we needed. Dier, in my opinion, offered none. I don't think he was good enough defensively to really actually put out any real fires or any moments. I still recall some times where he just didn't have any clue of the danger around him, and he does get away with it at times. And then also in possession, we saw at the very end of the game and the way that he gave away the ball. Also, just in general, the really slow and methodical play where it felt like Spurs just couldn't really get it going, couldn't really get a move on. And also just the sort of general sloppiness, like in the passing and in the play. I think is not a coincidence that these two came into the team who I think have struggled to try to play this way in the past. All of a sudden, you know, the passing patterns, the general zippiness to the play is all gone because it does really build out from the back with this team. We do need our center backs to be good in possession. And like I said, if we're missing Van de Ven and Romero, might not be able to have two great center backs in possession as backups, but we need to have at least one of them. We need to have one of them be it. And so that's where I'm sort of advocating for there needs to be a drop of at least Dier or a Davies. And then we have to think later, and probably something we might think about for next time, who's actually better between Phillips or Dorrington. But at least we know that one of those guys is going to also provide one or the other. Phillips or Dorrington are either going to provide that ability in possession that we need, or they might actually be a decent enough defender where they could also put out fires, also be all right. But like I said, in the case of Dier, I felt like in that game against Wolves, he wasn't doing one or the other. He wasn't being solid enough defensively to keep the 1-0 when we did find ourselves in the 90th minute with a 1-0 lead. And he wasn't good enough in possession to actually help us play the scintillating type of style that we have been known for this season. So that's where I want to let other people in here. Maybe Dave, I'll let you in on that. But that's what I mean. You know, we can lower our standards. We have to be realistic. One of them needs to do one or the other, right?
Look, you're absolutely spot on, Jack. I mean, there's a reason why the fullbacks, the midfielders, the forward line were all poor. Because every other position or runs that they're used to making or positions they drop into to receive the ball, when it's Romero and Van de Ven, they can make them runs and drop in and receive the ball knowing that they're going to get it. And if the option isn't on, one of them are comfortable enough to run it and to create an option to pull people out. With Eric Dier and Ben Davies, you go back and watch the game, at times it was so slow coming out. Wolves pressed up the midfield man for man, went man for man on the fullbacks, which meant we had no passing options out. And it just absolutely ruined it, you know, and that's why everyone else played crap, because the ball was so slow. That's where it starts. It starts at the two centre-backs, and then it comes out from there. That's where we play off. That's our launch pad. And when you got two guys crap in possession, and let's be honest, they're scared to play forward because they can't do it. They've shown in years gone by they can't do it, which has a knock-on effect on everyone else around. And I know some people would say, Dave, that's too simplistic. But if you go and play in a team, in a midfield or in a forward line, and you've got crap defenders who can't pass the ball out, it has a knock-on effect to how you're able to affect that football game. So it's not simplistic. It's just reality. And I also feel like, as a fan base, we're very, very guilty of lowering the bar of appraisal for these guys. What we praise them for doing, and we don't even bat an eyelid when Romero or Van de Ven does it because it's so regular. So I do think we're guilty of lowering the bar for these guys. And like you said, Jack, we can get away with probably Davies, but you have to have the guy who's going to take the responsibility on the ball beside him. You cannot play them two again. And for me, I'm at the point. We all knew coming into this season it was a project. Yes, we've all changed our expectations slightly in terms of wanting to sort of remain up the top, you know, getting Champions League qualification. But there's no reason why we can't do it while still, you know, promoting some of the younger players into these positions ahead of these guys. Because at least what they will do, Jack, is they'll come in, they'll bring a youthfulness, they'll put people under pressure, or make other people up their standards, do things with a lot more purpose, up the senior people's games, because you got young, hungry kids chomping down on their places. You know, so for me, I think there's a lot of benefits to it. You look at Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola, every season, out of nowhere, this youngster comes through, and they do it to keep the other people on their toes, to say, hang on here a minute, don't you dare sit back and relax, because we'll just bring this guy in. You know, Kyle Walker looked like he was easing off. Okay, Rico Lewis, in you go. You know, and then all of a sudden, Kyle Walker brings his game back to the acceptable level for Pep Guardiola, and Liverpool are famous for doing it as well. So your Sir Alex Ferguson used to do it at United. And I'm at the point, Jack, why would we keep persisting with something that we know doesn't work, and actually take a stab in the dark and go with something that, you know, okay, it may not work. But if that happened, if Ashley Phillips made one of them mistakes, people go, oh, Spurs fans would crucify them. No, they wouldn't. They crucified Davies and Dier for it because they've been doing it for years. But if a Phillips or a Dorrington done it, we would sit there after the game and say, you know what? It's a learning curve for them. A learning curve. You know, they'll learn from that, and you know they will. Whereas with Dier and Davies, they do not learn. And for me, if we all said it would be a project, let's bloody commit to it. Why are we so scared? I'm hearing people go, let's sign Jared Braithwaite from Everton. He ain't much older than Phillips or Dorrington. Why are we wasting 50 million over there when we've got players that, you know, are good enough to come in? So for me,
Sonny, yeah.
I'm just sick of persisting with it. They're losers. They always will be. They suck the culture, the life out of me, the fan base, out of the squad, out of Ange Postecoglou, out of the coaching staff, out of Doris the tea lady and Henry the chef. I'm sick of it. Just get them gone so that we can just, when we do have players stepping in, they're going to be better than them. I mean, Sonny was talking about the likes of Webster, Dunk, people like that. They're miles better than them. They would come to Tottenham Hotspur.
Doris hates losing a lead at 1-0 in the 90th minute. It just drains every bit of energy out of her. She probably hates it more than I do. But to touch on what Dave is saying there, Sonny, right? Like, we sort of knew what we were going to get with Dier and Davies. We thought maybe if you were just wanting to be slightly hopeful that, you know what, maybe we could just get the 3 points and we'll just sort of suck it up. Didn't end up getting the 3 points. So now you sort of ask yourself, you have to ask yourself, maybe we do throw in a mystery card, throw in, sort of a lottery in the case of Phillips or Dorrington, just because it could be something different instead of what we know and what we're going to get with Dier and Davies.
Like I'd chuck Phillips in the next game straight away. People were saying he's only had 6 appearances for Blackburn, but it's in the Championship, which is a very respectable league in itself. Dorrington's a bit different because obviously he hasn't played a minute of senior football. But I mean, personally, I wouldn't chuck them both in at the same time.
Yeah,
I feel like that. I feel like that would be
on that page too.
A proper baptism of fire. I was like, I keep using,
especially with the games.
But then the problem is who do you accompany him with? Like, I'm thinking you still want the left footer of Davis, but then would you? Can't believe I'm going out these words, but like maybe Dier would be seen as a more senior centre back, which is laughable in itself. But that was like the final nail in Dave's coffin there. But that was me. That wasn't even me saying that. Was me just like putting it out there.
I do the same thing. I torture him daily with that sort of thing.
So I'm thinking maybe Phillips and Davis, which sounds like two Welsh choir boys. But I don't know. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I mean, if Ange did say we see the team sheet for the Villa game and it is Dorrington and Phillips, I think that would be like, wow, that would be a statement.
Yeah.
But you're asking them to then 2 new people to play with another a new goalkeeper and a new like I feel like that's too much of a change. Whereas I feel like the easier option, and I don't really blame Ange for doing it, was to go right. Let's give Dier, because even in the Chelsea game, I know we lost 4-1 in the end. Dier did look okay. He did look okay. Like he did a job. But
I disagree. You had a picture on your thumbnail of that defensive line. If you look at it, Dyer's the only one holding everyone on side. He's the only one not keeping that line.
Okay. I surrender, Dave. I surrender.
I thought maybe you guys would appreciate this part, and I want to connect kind of 2 points here. What it did frustrate me over the weekend, though, Sonny, and I'm not sure if you saw this on Twitter, but there were a few that I felt like were trying to find a way to protect Dier and Davies, of course, from people like, me and Scary Jack and Dave, who really go after them, in these sort of moments. And I can understand the need for feeling like, maybe we need to, or I don't do it personally, but I feel like there are a lot of people that feel like can't just harp about these guys all the time, got to show them, a bit of protection or something. But it felt like some of that protectionism of them came in sort of like then putting down like Phillips and Dorrington and some of our younger players, where it just felt like, oh, like we have to go with Dier and Davies because Phillips, I even saw they were saying isn't actually as good in possession as people think. And it's like, I mean, we have a far better, sample size of Eric Dier than we do of Ashley Phillips. Let's not pretend to be experts on the guy. I'm not even going to pretend to be an expert on the guy. But what we've tried to nail down here is there is just this mystery factor with him, right? Like he could actually end up being better than what we have. And what we have right now is barely anything. Like it's like I said, it's like in Dyer's case, he wasn't doing one or the other. So all I need from Ashley Phillips or Dorrington is to be either good enough in possession to keep this system moving in the way that we need, or be solid enough defensively that if we do happen to find ourselves with a 1-0 sort of lead in the 90th minute, that we can retain it. I'm not asking for much. And I don't even think in the case of those younger kids that even is actually, asking too much of them, if they are actually in fact good enough, if they are actually capable of making that step up. And also, Dave, just might find this interesting. People are so quick, right, this weekend to put down, these younger players and everything like that. But just listen to some of these Spurs players that had no loans of any kind, just went straight up from the first team. Tanganga, Harry Winks was given, no loans of any kind, straight up called up to the first team and given minutes. Tom Carroll, Skip, Nabil Bentaleb, actually, and funny enough, Ryan Mason, and Dane Scarlett were all guys that, were brought into the first team at some stage, given some minutes, given some chances. Ryan Mason, I think I was wrong about. For some reason, I just like Ryan Mason. I wanted to throw him in there. Troy Parrott. There are some guys that we've given minutes to that when we've needed to, or just because it made sense or whatever at the time, and we gave them those minutes, especially in Harry Winks' case, a bit of a person that gets a lot of love from Spurs fans. How is that any different from, Phillips or Dorrington, giving them this chance? I don't think it's very different from what we did with Harry Winks or Nabil Bentaleb, right?
It's not. It's not. Look, for me, we got to be so scared, Some of our greatest players, even from the Pochettino era, Walker, Rose, Dele Alli, came from lower leagues,
True.
And look what they went on to do at Tottenham Hotspur. We should not be afraid. We're afraid of going into the unknown, and I get it. But I'm convinced some of the comments that I've seen, half of these people haven't even bothered spending time on a Monday evening or a Tuesday evening sitting there watching the under-21s. I don't even think they've watched the two guys that they're talking about, because what they're describing is not what I'm seeing for them playing for the under-21s. I also hear a lot of, but surely Ange would have picked them, if they were good enough too. But I think people are very quick to forget. Ange Postecoglou has to be fair, and he has his principles that he manages by. In the summer, what did he say? I'm going to give everybody an opportunity, wipe the slate clean. Now, those who wanted to stay got an opportunity in the Carabao Cup. Dier wasn't fit, so that opportunity wasn't there. So if he's going to stick to his word, and because the minute he breaks that, that'll alienate people in the dressing room, fractures start to happen. So he has to stick to his word. So that's why he picked Dier. That's why he gave him the opportunity in the first place. He cannot abandon the principles and can't have one rule for Eric Dier compared to one rule for everyone else.
He's got to give him his chance. Like
people are
else.
very, very, very quick to forget that. So that, for me, is the reason why he gave Dier that opportunity. However, he now has to learn from that. He has to watch some of the stuff that's gone on at Tottenham before. When that defence was leaking the goals it was becoming a huge problem. What did it do? It brought questions around the management, around the whole club, and around all the other players in the squad. We cannot allow that to happen again. Ange Postecoglou cannot allow that to happen. People will go, Tottenham won't sack Ange. Well, if we can sack Jose Mourinho, Conte, and Pochettino, who got us to a Champions League final, they'd have no problem sacking Ange Postecoglou, trust me. So this is where he needs to be a bit smarter and go with a Phillips or a Dorrington. Phillips, much better defensively than Eric Dier, just as big as Eric Dier. He's got more pace than Eric Dier. He's good on the ball. I'd argue Dorrington's even better on the ball and plays on the left-hand side. We had this conversation earlier on, Jack, about, under-21s football, it's a bit different. But when you watch them in the EFL trophy where they are up against men, they're well able to handle themselves. They're well able to play.
They are play around. They can play around them, and they can dominate possession against them, and they can play them out the park. It's a good point you make there.
And like you said, they're competent on the ball. And just one last thing, sorry, Jack. This is from Postecoglou's memoirs. I believe he put out a book in 2017, and this is what he had to say on young players. So this is Postecoglou's philosophy on young players. Over my time, I'd found that the earlier promising players are thrown into the mix, the better for everyone. The better players will really thrive, and the struggles will be found out, and the strugglers will be found out, and no further resources will be used up on them. So when you hear that, he's not afraid to give them an opportunity. There's a lot of them being called up to train with the first team. And I think it's only a matter of time before we start seeing some of them potentially being drip fed. Because if you're going off the quotes there, he will give them the opportunity. And then you either sink or you swim.
Sonny, didn't we throw Tanganga into a game against Liverpool or something like that under Jose Mourinho?
He played against Manchester City, didn't he? And had quite a good game. Right back, he kept Sterling quiet. I think that was against Nuno as well. But and Liverpool, because I remember that actually.
That was under Jose.
Because that was on the documentary as well, and they focused on it. I think.
Are we afraid to play young players? Like, how is that any different from this situation?
I think people are nervous, but then at the same time, everyone wants youth players. Like, what do you want? But I think, so you know what it is, and I feel like this is the argument I'm going to use to why it hasn't happened. It's because I feel like the players you named as well, apart from Tanganga, maybe chucking in a midfielder or a striker or a forward, it's probably easier and less risky, because if they don't score or they, misplace a pass or something, nothing much might come of it. But if Phillips makes a mistake, might result in a goal. This is a young guy. He's just arrived at the club. For example, he's already, Andrew said with Alejo Veliz, like this guy's not ready till January, but we've seen him already make an appearance. So maybe he's waiting for the right opportunity. And Villa might be that opportunity. Like, I was surprised that both Phillips and Dorrington were on the bench at the weekend, along with Donnelly as well. So there is something there where, and we've said already, the young guy training with the first team. So there is that natural progression, more than what we were getting under Conte and Mourinho, of youth bleeding into the first team.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen, but that's why I'm so on the fence about it, because I'd love to see it. I'd love it to happen, but I also want these players, especially the youth, to be, protected and given the best opportunity.
Yeah.
And, the perfect storm would have been for them to come in naturally, maybe, rotate the player or something. Like, say for example, Phillips with Van der Ven or Phillips with Romero. But the issue is, it's like, even like Phillips with Dier, Phillips with Davis, you're also thinking like he could get let down by them. So, but I think there's a promising player there. I'd love to see it. I'd love him to be on. I mean, that's what I'm saying. If Ange put them both on the team sheet, it would be a statement and a half.
I hate to make this a binary thing, but I agree with you when you kind of say, like, you either believe in young players or you don't, right? Like, you can't have it both ways, where you're like, oh, you protect them and, you give them the right pathway, and then also never play them, I guess. Like, seems to be the case. Like, that seems like you have to let them, fly, right? It's let them out of the nest, let them at some stage, sort of do it on their own and see if they can do it. And also in this case, it's not like we're going to be throwing these guys in for, I don't know, like a huge, months on end, game after game after game. Like, we're just sort of asking these guys, I think, to maybe do, if they can, and I don't think there's any shame if they can't, just a job, for a few games. And like I said, just one or the other. Back to that, just defensively or in possession. Can you do one of those that the previous guy, Eric Dier, in my opinion at least, was not? And I think if whoever's able to step up and do that, could even be an Emerson, if it isn't a younger player, it could just be somebody like that just does the job that is needed. And also, I do feel like there is this weird fear about playing young players, at least right now, it feels like, from the fan base. And I even point out guys, actually, even in Premier League right now, you look at Lewis Hall, who was given a chance under Chelsea. Chelsea seemed more keen on giving sometimes younger players, an opportunity or a chance. Even Reece James, right? Of course, I don't think Phillips or Dorrington, I'm not going to put that sort of pressure on them to be as good as a Reece James. But even Lewis Hall, I think, is still in the very early developments of his game, and at a very young age has been given a lot of chances. Even Levi Colwell, he's been a brilliant, brilliant player, but he had to have been given that chance, that leap of faith at Brighton or whatever, to step up and see whether he was worth it. Mark Gahey, right? He didn't play any sort of games whatsoever until he went to Crystal Palace. Now he's a regular starting Premier League defender without having any experience prior to that in the actual senior men's game. I think too, with Romeo Lavia, was brought from Manchester City, thrown into the Southampton team, looked like one of the best midfielders for a period in the Premier League. Again, not much experience in the actual senior level from that kid. And I'm not saying that Phillips or Dorrington are going to end up being at these guys' level. I do think they're very, very well talented, and they could be, but I'm not trying to put that type of pressure on them. Just saying, other clubs showed that faith. They let the guys, get that opportunity. They showed, what, we're kind of desperate here, or we do need, maybe to look at a younger player instead of spending money yet again. Let's see if the kid can do it. Let's see if he's ready. And you only know if you give them that chance. And that's what's funny, is you see so many other clubs that are even kind of on our level doing it, kind of like Chelsea, even Wolves. I can think of so many players that come through the Wolves Academy in some sort of way that they sort of just chuck in there kind of randomly when they need him. Even look at Curtis Jones, for Liverpool, who I don't think is the most talented player in the world, but has been used as a very, vital squad player when he was given his chance eventually in the Liverpool team. Even a Tyreek Mitchell, I looked up even today, Dave, at Crystal Palace. Tyreek Mitchell was never given any sort of loan or anything like that. They just called upon him one night, and now he's stayed in that team ever since. So even Anthony Gordon, Garnacho at Man United, Palestri, that guy Hannibal, like there's so many even lesser talented younger kids that feel like they're given more chances than even our own Spurs players. That's why I feel like as a fan base, we need to just accept younger players are given a chance, and it's not that crazy to give them one.
And let's be honest about it. They wouldn't have made such an effort to change the whole wage payment structure for that group if they didn't believe these guys would be good enough to step into the first team if needed. There's a reason why they made such a huge effort to tie these guys down to contract, because they do believe they're good enough. They reckon they've got a good sort of golden generation between the under-21s and the under-17s at the minute. Between there, they reckon they've got a good golden generation. And like you said, Jack, it just comes down to someone being brave enough to give these guys an opportunity. We've seen in the past, even in cup games, we've stuck by players that were out of form. Did they produce anything different? No. We went out of cups. Then when they step in the league, did they produce anything different? No. There's never going to be an ideal opportunity to give a guy, a youngster an opportunity. Never. Never. But if you're not going to do it now with the injury crisis and suspension list that we have, you're never, ever going to do it at Tottenham Hotspur. Yeah. Never. And, we have to start producing players through that academy. On that squad list every single year, 4 of them players have to have trained with the academy, I think from 15, 16 years of age for, I think, 4 years. So, we have to start producing, and we've geared everything towards this. And it's just about giving them the opportunity. We're too scared, Jack. Yeah. What I would say to people, if I encourage you, go and watch the guys for the under-21s. You'll see, compared to other defenders in and around that squad, they are miles ahead in terms of their development, in terms of defending, in terms of on the ball. And all they need is an opportunity. That's all they need. Yeah. And it's about time we give them one. We've already we should have learned our lessons from years gone by. Madueke, Edwards, people like that who have left Tottenham Hotspur to go and search for first-team football because we didn't give them the opportunity. The other club they go to gives them that opportunity. All of a sudden, you're seeing them bounded around in the media, 50, 60, 70 million price tag. At some point, we have to give them an opportunity, and you're never going to know if they're good enough until you do. And with what Ange Postecoglou said from that book, hopefully he still remembers that quote, Jack, and it happens very, very soon. We should not be scared,
Yeah, he needs to be brave.
Ledley King, for instance, one of our greatest ever defenders, one that we all revere. He was given an opportunity at a young age, and look what he went on to do for Tottenham Hotspur. Look at the high regard that we hold him in.
I think there are just countless examples of guys that have been given that opportunity without even any loans or anything of any kind. And they ended up to do amazing things, or they ended up just being regular squad players like in the Premier League. And that's totally serviceable.
Look at Ollie Skip. I think Ollie Skip is
a great example.
Bog standard. I feel really hard because I think there could be a player there.
Chance
I don't think he's any shining light, is he? He's not like the best midfielder we've got to offer. He's probably going to play against Villa, but I just want to say as well, some of the speeches delivered by Dave today have been fantastic. Fantastic. Give that man the Oscar.
I'm just passionate about it. I've been watching these guys for such a long time.
No, that's what I rate. I rate that. I think that's fantastic. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not too au fait with the whole youth setup, but I'm more in the know than I was like a year or so ago, because it's good. It's the proof is in the pudding. Like, they're putting up numbers in the second division, and even the under 18s are good. There's evidence there. And also, how many times have we sung "He's One of Our Own" about Kane and like people like that? We love a youth prospect. And also, Kane literally is one of our best ever players from the academy. You said Ledley King as well. Like, to me, I mean, don't get me wrong, Phillips isn't our prospect. Like, he's Blackburn.
Sol Campbell. I know people don't want to hear it, right? Let's be honest. But Sol Campbell, we gave him an opportunity, came through the ranks.
It's just, but Skip is a great example of like, we needed somebody to do a job. Like, and Skip was actually the guy that came in, did a job, and we praised him for it. Now we find that maybe might not be to the level, but still gave him that chance. And I would never take that back. Never take that back, that chance that we gave him. And even the moments and minutes that he got under Pochettino or Jose, I
Even
really did
Saar.
appreciate those
Well,
moments.
I find it weird how my final point on this.
People didn't want to play Pop Matasar last season.
But
They
that's
thought
what I
that
mean.
he, yeah.
It's like these players who are young but are European. It's like there's no risk there really. Whereas there could be a risk. Whereas like academy players, it's like I like personally I can't get my head around. Like Saar, like is
How's
technically a
it any
risk. And
different? Yeah.
we put him in against AC Milan at the San Siro, and he was probably one of the best players on the pitch. Same with like even like Van der Ven. I know he's played a year of top flight, but he's like 22 years old. Like these are young players. Destiny Adogi, young player. Like Vicario, unknown entity. We've chucked him in goal out of nowhere. He's displaced World Cup winning club captain Hugo Lloris. To me, it's no different. Well, I don't know. Maybe
Well
I'm
said.
talking
Well
untrue.
said.
Last thing I'm going to say on it is I think we have to get our head around being older doesn't necessarily make you a better player, or it just doesn't. We have to scrap that. Age. Just because you're 30, it doesn't mean you're better than an 18-year-old kid. It just does not.
Yeah. I think we're going to wrap things up in part 3. We're going to give Sonny a plug for his channel. We're also just going to ask a very quick question, just sort of on our league position. We'll give sort of short answers on it, but really did enjoy that. And hopefully everybody join us in part 3. Yes, everybody, back into part 3, sort of wrapping things up here on the podcast. And a question that I sort of wanted to just end things off with is really, how do you expect Spurs to fare in these very, very difficult games? As much as we talked about, putting the faith in the youth, you really do have to be brave this time because there's very difficult games ahead of us. Aston Villa at home, Man City away from home, West Ham at home, and then Newcastle at home. Very nice to hear that there are a lot of home fixtures that I just listed there, which does give me a bit of hope. And that's why I'm going to ask the question, could we grab a possible 7 points out of a possible 12? And that's where I want to get you started, Sonny, because, right, a lot of missing players. Romero wouldn't even come back until the West Ham game. Something to think about there. But with those home fixtures, maybe we can get something done. 7 points would be fine, actually, with everything that's gone on, all the injuries and everything.
I think 7 points would be fantastic. I'd literally snap your arm off for that right now. I believe, apart from City, I think City are going to trounce us. I believe that they'll just be really good on the day. It'll probably be an actual plot twist for this fixture because usually we're, used to us sitting back, up to 2 shots, 2 goals, we win 2-0. They have 40 shots and don't have the luck. But then again, they'll tee that up as never scored a goal at the new stadium, never won at the new stadium. So they, there is that going into it. But I think I could see that being a bit of a runaway game for them. Whereas the other teams, Villa, Newcastle, West Ham, even though some will probably say they're having quite good seasons, maybe West Ham in Europe more than domestically, I think these teams are very hit and miss. Villa are really good at home, have been fantastic under Emery, but they're good at home, I believe. So there's that. Newcastle, I don't think, I just think they've been really confusing. Like I watched them against Bournemouth and I was like, is this the same team? And in the Champions League, they've been a bit lethargic since the PSG game. I think they've, they sort of peaked at that point. And West Ham, I think, I'm originally from Essex as well, so I've got a lot of West Ham mates. So yeah, it's their cup final, isn't it? But and I believe, like, in all honesty, like West Ham need to get rid of David Moyes. They've got such a good squad there that needs a proactive manager. Like, imagine if they had former player Gary O'Neill at their club. Like, I feel like that was an opportunity they could have exposed. But enough about them. With us, I fancy us to beat West Ham. I think we could beat Villa, and I think we could draw against Newcastle. And that's where the 7 points come from. So that's how I see the games going.
Hear me out on this one, Dave. If we don't get 7, I could actually see us picking up 6. Because if Newcastle's injuries pretty much still stay around the same, and we do get Romero back, I feel like a West Ham win, Newcastle win, Aston Villa and Man City are really more the tougher fixtures. That might be weird. I think they all look like really hard games, but I'm more intimidated by the Aston Villa game because Romero would still be out, and also the Man City game, just because it's obviously Man City away. So what do you make of that? Maybe more possible that we would pick up 2 wins off of the edge of the first 2?
Look, I think you guys are being doomsday merchants. For me, I think we should be
12
picking up
points.
No, look, I'm not that delusional. I'm not that far gone yet. No, I think 9 points, a good modest 9 points would do for me. The fake West Ham, they wear claret and blue as well. Aston Villa, for me, we should be beating them. We're the home team. We've got Destiny Adoji, the big dog, back, so that'll solve a problem down the left-hand side. We won't be as weak defensively.
True.
I suspect you may see Emerson probably moved into centre-back. So I think we'll be a bit more solid, hopefully a bit better on the football. So away from home, look, Unai Emery's a good tactician. He will set up and frustrate us and stuff like that. But I think we'll be angry after last week. So I do predict we win there. When it comes to who we got next, Man City, I mean, look, years gone by that suited us because we've sat back, we've caught them on the counter, and then we've had the great striker more football to punish them. We no longer have that, and it's going to be, look, we're going to go tough.
Different.
It's going to be different, though. It's going to be different. And without Van der Ven and Romero, if we had them, I'd say 12 points, but we don't.
I'd love to see Van der Ven versus Haaland as well.
I think, that one's going to be harsh. Dier or Davies up against Haaland. I mean, that's nightmare stuff.
I might as well call it off now. Just say, take the 3 points, take the default 3-0. I've also just realised, sorry to interrupt, that one's not at home. So we will lose that one, definitely. So all that spiel I said about they've never scored at us, we're not playing there, so it doesn't matter.
Well, the funny thing, though, is with our record against Man City in general, though, and also our lack of confidence going into it and just us writing that off, it would be so Spurs for us to actually lose at Aston Villa and then win away, Man City away or something like that. I think that could be definitely within our brand. But 7 points out of possible 12. I'm with Sonny. I would snap my hand off and his for that straight away. I'd be totally okay with that. You were about to say something, I think, earlier, Sonny, or am I wrong?
Oh, no, that was the point, was that I got the fixture around the wrong way.
Okay, good. No worries. But yeah, Dave, unless you had anything else to say, I think wrapping things up here.
Yeah, just quickly, the bubble enthusiast and Barney the dinosaur enthusiast will absolutely smash them. It's the Irish Hotspur derby. They hate me, I hate them. It's mutual. I feel good for that game. And then look, when it comes on to the barcodes, Newcastle, look, their injury list hopefully will come back to bite them in the ass for that. So hopefully we can get them in there.
Hopefully their barcode kits don't get scanned on the on the way in to the fancy new stadium. But everybody, please, thank you to Sonny in the comments. Please head on over to his channel, Sonny Talks Spurs. Check out all the different content that he has out there. As you might have heard, we did drop probably a few cheeky plugs for the members only kind of content and videos. There is an extra section for them. And I'm kind of thinking about, finding an extra way for even some extra sort of bonuses or something from this podcast, even for you guys. So really, please do become a member. I think you will see benefits of it. Smash the like button too. Yes, Dave?
It's the season of giving, Jack, so become a member.
Gift one to someone else, maybe. Gifting season, gift one to somebody else. But everybody, we do appreciate you guys tuning into the podcast. Thanks for watching this one back. Hit the like button on the way out. Head on over to Sonny Talk Spurs, and we will be seeing you. Come on, you Spurs. In the big Ange we trust. We never stop. Everywhere we go.